Okay, so we have two fantastic panelists today. I'm going to start by introducing Bob Masterson. Bob is the president and CEO of the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada. Reporting to the board of directors, he's responsible, obviously, for the strategic direction and ongoing operations of the association. Bob joined the CIAC in 2010 as their vice president of responsible care, the industry's globally recognized sustainability initiative. And under his leadership, Responsible Care enacted a new set of sustainability principles and guidelines for Canada's chemistry industry. Prior to joining the CIAC, Bob was Director of Regulatory Affairs with the Cement Association of Canada and spent 15 years as a consultant on environment and sustainability issues in a number of industry sectors, including forest products, electricity, cement, mining, and energy. So welcome, Bob. And today, Bob is going to share with us some perspective on how his organization redesigned the employee philosophy and their use of a personal COVID recovery plan. And also, I was really impressed by Bob's shift and approach to leadership. So he's going to share a little bit more with us during the panel discussion. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Karen.
And next, our next panelist is Denise Amiot. Bonjour, Denise. Denise was appointed in 2013 as the president and CEO of Colleges and Institutes Canada. They're the voice of Canada's colleges, institutes, cégeps, and polytechnics, and an international leader in education for employment in over 25 countries. Bonnie was the president and CEO of the Canada Science and Technology Museums Corporations and has worked as assistant deputy minister at the federal level in her last three roles. She's the past chair of the World Federation of Colleges and Polytechnics and chair of the advisory committee of the Institute of Science, Society and Policy, and was on the Ontario Trillium Foundation board for 6 years. She's currently a board member of the Forum for International Trade Training, which is the Canadian Centre for Science and Policy, and has been appointed by the Government of Canada on the Future Skills Council of Canada. Denise has received several leadership awards and is a sought-after speaker both nationally and internationally. Denise today is going to share with us her perspective and the interesting, innovative things that they've done because their organization has grown significantly during the pandemic. And they've not only focused on organizational growth, but they've focused on personal growth as well. And it's a particular perspective given the current war for talent that we're watching happening out there. And there was an interesting communication strategy that Denise is going to talk about around their listening tour that they did. So thank you very much, Denise. Merci beaucoup de nous joindre aujourd'hui.
Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici avec vous.
And I'm going to turn the table over to start the panel discussion with you, Bob. We've got a whole gamut that we want to focus on. Certainly, we've got some interesting things that we're batting around here. We've got organizational growth, we've got personal growth, we have certainly this war for talent. We have, the remote workforce and what tips and strategies are you looking at? We've got vaccine policies, so many things that we want to put on the table today, but I just want to get your perspective and then we'll start the interactive dialogue.
Sure. Oh, which one of those do you want to talk about? We have 20 minutes. Look, I think it's a really challenging time. We have become comfortable and we built an organization that's become very comfortable with change. And if you are an organization or a leader that's comfortable with status quo, you're probably not doing too well right now, and your team's not doing too well right now. So I think that's one message is being very comfortable with change. And it might not have been COVID, it's just the world we're in is complex, it's fast moving, it's challenging. You better have a team that's poised for and accepting of change. And the other, and we'll talk about it a bit when we perhaps go through some of your prepared questions, I think it's having an organizational philosophy, having a culture that you can actually describe and you can point people to when you are going through change, when you are going through troubles, you got that lodestar up there. Say, remember, this is who we are. That's where we're going. And I think that's a really helpful thing to have, and it's worked well for us.
And
That's
certainly one of the things that David spoke about in the data that they collected, what is your value proposition, right? How are you explaining what you are and what your purpose is, not only to the stakeholders external to your organization, but also the stakeholders that are internal and any prospective employees is on a go-forward basis.
Yes, yeah. I mean, especially in these times, I think the member proposition hasn't changed as much, but the what is your people proposition? What's your people value? And I know it was lower on David's questionnaire, perhaps in May. I think a lot of people, if they redid that question, that war for talent is climbing up that list awfully quickly. So you better be able to articulate what your people philosophy is.
Tell me a little bit about this COVID-19 plan that you had your employees engage with you on.
Well, none of us, I don't think, could say we were prepared for COVID. I think we had some things working in our favor, again, being change-oriented. We had been through an exercise in our last strategic plan where we really focused on building connections with because they were feeling left out. So the technologies and the processes were already, that really helped us. And our people philosophy, which was, I can talk more about later, the focus on whole people. I think that was all strong and in place. But COVID snuck up on us without us being able to prepare for it. So we did respond. That was great. What I've tried to say to people is we're about to go through another change, an equally important transition. And David said it, we don't know what that's going to look like. But here's the difference. We can be intentional this time. So we've asked our team to focus on some key questions like, there must have been some things about this current 18, 20 months that have worked well for you, both professionally and personally. What are those? Write them down. And make sure when we go back to whatever the future is, when we go to the future, you keep those as part of your daily life. You're also going to have things that you can't wait to leave behind. And make sure you document those as well. And be intentional about how you avoid them as much as you can on your day-to-day basis. And then the question about, well, what was there in your former working arrangements you liked and disliked you want to leave behind? So for me, for instance, 90 nights a year on the road. Let me tell you, there is no future anywhere under any circumstances where I'm on the road 90 nights a year. That's part of my personal reboot plan. So we all tried to come up with a personal reboot plan that we post on our wall, and it will, when we transition intentionally, it will guide us and let us not be victims of our circumstances. We will be intentional about how we reapproach our new work arrangements.
Speaking of new work arrangements, you're currently all working virtually, as I understand it, and you're looking at creating a reintegration to the workplace strategy. In the meantime, you have a remote work policy program. And one of the things that, as an HR advisory service, we get so many questions from our clients on who pays for what and when, and there is no roadmap to that.
Yeah.
And there are some best practices and some really cool things that your organization has done. Can you share some of those?
Well, look, it wasn't our employees' fault that they had to. I think again, one of our people philosophy is about we're whole people, and that you can't separate work and life. If you got to take care of both parts. And we did not want to create a situation. Not all the employees are as well compensated as I am, that's for sure. And we didn't want to create a situation where people were stressed and had trouble doing the work because they didn't have the tools. So the first thing we did is we said, whatever's in your office that you want to take home, is it a chair, is it a monitor, whatever you want, just take it. And the next thing we said is, what don't you have that you still need? And we provide an allowance with receipts up to $500 to set up their home office. And then we renew that every year because people do go through consumables. But we also said, wait a minute, we're asking people to work from home. What do we provide them at work? Well, we certainly provide them with their internet. So we provide the staff with up to $100. Again, they have to provide their bill to us, but whatever their internet costs are up to $100, we accommodate that. We're asking them to work from home. We have to give them the tools to do it. The challenge as we start to explore back to work is, well, wait a minute, now we're going to have two because people and function. Some people have 2 or 3 monitors now in their home office, and now they're about to transition to work, but it's probably going to be hybrid. And there's some days at home and some days at work, and they're not going to carry 3 monitors around with them. So exploring that and thinking of the cost implications of that are important. But again, as David said in his survey, yeah, these things are going to cost us money. But let's remember, back to my 90 nights a year on the road, we haven't spent a penny on travel in the last 18 months. So I think we will be able to accommodate folks. The challenge is, if you have not started thinking about that now, you're going to be for a shock when you look at supply chain times to get computers and monitors delivered to your offices. It is not going to happen in the usual 24 hours we've grown accustomed to. We're talking months of time frame.
Interesting aspect of getting back to the value proposition, right? So what is the value proposition to your prospective employees? And how does that factor in employee retention? And also, again, with the war for talent, when you're looking for new staff and you're actually redesigning what it is that you and your team says about the culture of your workplace, how are you factoring that in? And I think there's some interesting stuff that you shared around, we all have biases and so on, and we've got a certain leadership style and leadership approach, and there was some, leadership styles that needed to shift as we managed through this crisis. So tell me a little bit about what you shifted and what.
Well, I guess I'll put it in words of the biggest personal challenge to me, other than not being around people. You may notice I'm a people person, love being around people. I talked about our organization being adaptive to change, prepared for change, embracing and accepting change. We built ourselves that way. But that's my personal value proposition. I'm always looking for, how do we get better? What can we do differently to be better? And it was early on in the, say a few months into the COVID pandemic, that my executive vice president said, Bob, your value proposition is becoming a real problem right now. Because, as I said, we're in a period of the team was in a period of deep change, just trying to adopt to be able to do their day-to-day work. They didn't need me driving that next continual improvement and that next big change in the organization. So, biting my tongue, writing my notes and filing them away for a better day, but really trying to put in check that drive for change and that drive for continuing. Can't stop continuing improvement, but you have to be. I've had to learn to be much more careful and slow, and probably consult with more people than I normally would about introducing something new. So personally, that's been the hardest part for me, but small price to pay.
How do you deal with the need for that charge from being with people? What have you done to shift for yourself there?
Well, I think that I speak more in whole. I think we were, I know in person, we were all very well connected. We got together, we shared a lot of laughs, we cared about each other. And that was the hardest thing to replicate virtually. So we did use the tools best we could. The idea of social events online. We set up a Teams water cooler where you can post your pictures, or someone posts a challenge, give me a picture of your dog doing a trick, just trying to be people with each other in addition to having transactions, if you were, over Teams and Zoom. And one of the things we did to help each other is every Friday morning we set aside 15 minutes for a virtual coffee, and no work, no shop talk. Talk about anything you want. You can't talk about a single project or anything to do with work, and just try to reconnect as people. But look, I think that's the biggest challenge in this environment. About, yes, there's lots of positives about working remotely and that type of thing. But I think what gets lost is the collaboration and creativity. There's just pieces of it that get missing. And so we find ourselves in these forums to be quite transactional. We come together, we do the business, we're done, we go on to the next thing. But it's that space and time between meetings and after a meeting where you go for coming, hey, I heard you say something really interesting. Could you tell me more about that? Because I think that might be really relevant to me. And I just find personally this environment doesn't create the space for that as well. So you really do have to rely on your networks, and OAX and groups like this are really important to help bring us together to take a step away from those day-to-day transactions and think a bit more about where am I and where do I want to go and what's everybody else doing. And maybe a last thing I might say in that idea, I mean, I know some folks already have a back to work plan. We don't. We are going to hopefully reopen our office in the coming weeks, but it'll be strictly voluntary, those that want to come in. And this is one of the few times, I think, where we're not going to be pioneers. We are going to watch what other people are going to do. I don't think any of my team even knows what they want. They will rush back because they have cabin fever. Let's see what happens in 2 or 3 months and what patterns they settle into. And I think the time for us to build our formal work arrangement policy, what are we, how do we want to work together, will be sometime next spring. We'll see what works for us, and we'll watch what the pioneers do and learn from their experiments, and then we'll formalize our own approach. But it's one of the few times I'd say we're probably not in a hurry to be early champions of something. It's
nothing wrong with sitting back and waiting and seeing how things unfold, right? Yeah, you don't always want to be the first one out of the gate. Well, thank you very much. That's really great. I'm going to switch this over to Denise now. Wow, your organization has undergone a significant amount of growth, and you managed to do that and also have a really keen focus on personal and professional growth internally, and you had this super cool listening tour. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that came about, and even some of those challenging moments that I'm sure you experienced along that journey.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. So what is interesting is that, yes, in fact, we doubled our size in the last 18 months. And so this means we don't have room for everybody anymore. And so we don't have choice. We need to think differently for the day that we come back, which will be in January, because now we are rethinking our offices completely to accommodate an hybrid workplace. And so there will be 3 different types of working offices, if you want, one where you work as a team, one where it's some noise but not too much, and then the quiet space. And it's quite interesting because it means that the office will be closed for 3 months, completely closed, which is similar to what has happened, for about 2 or 3 months during COVID. And I just want to share this with you because it's kind of funny. In March 2020, we were on the verge of signing a lease for new offices in the market. We are at Chateau Laurier on the 7th floor, and we needed 15 more offices because we had obtained a big project and we couldn't fit people. So look backward, what happened? COVID hit. We still haven't signed the lease, thanks God. And so we quickly realized, do we really need those 15 offices? No, we don't, and we'll be able to manage. But what happened, to answer your questions, what is this listening tour? So we initially, during the pandemic, I had staff meeting every week, both with my staff in Canada and my staff overseas. And as we were growing, I realized, oh my God, I don't even know those people. I've never met them. Like my own VP that I've recruited, I saw her in person after 6 months of working with her. I recruited her online. I didn't know if she was tall, short, or how she really looked, except from the face up. And so this was quite interesting. But it dawned on me that as we were growing, I was missing the contact, because when we were having those staff meetings, we were not 65 anymore. that I could name, but there was this crowd of, at one point we grow, you know, we went to 80, 90, 100, now we're almost 135, I think, or counting. And so it's a big national association now. And so I decided to do this listening tour where I was meeting people mixed from all divisions together with, and I asked them 5 questions. The first one was, what are they most proud of working at CI, at our associations? And then what do you, so I have the list, and now I can't recall because that's almost a year ago, and I've started the second tour, so it's all mixed up in my head. But you know, a series of questions about, did they have suggestions vis-a-vis some of the things we could do better and things like that. And the last questions was, anything else you want to share with me? And at those, I also included my director of people and culture, because I wanted her to hear what was said during the whole process, because I knew that after we would want to do something with that input. And now, of course, I was meeting the people, but this summer I thought I need to do another tour, because we have a lot more people that were not part of the first tour. And this time what I'm doing differently though, the first time I had the staff that were in small groups and the managers in small groups. But this time I'm putting everybody together. And I think it's way better to have both the staff and the managers, still all the divisions that are mixed. And my 5 questions, I'll give them to you now. The first one is, so what's the best experience you have had so far at CICAN? So for some, they've been with us for 6 days, 6 months. Others, it's 6 years or 30 years. The second question, CICAN is growing quickly. So what is your priority for managing this growth? Do you have any opportunity you see for us to consider, or any challenge that you want to bring to our attention? The third one, we are moving forward in an hybrid workplace. So what is the most important thing for our associations to ensure a smooth transition? Fourth, we're halfway through our strategic plan, which is a 5-year strat plan. How do you feel you personally contribute to its goals? And a lot of people talk about the visions, because I had my second group, in fact, about an hour ago, so it's quite fresh. And the 5th questions, again, anything else you want to share? And I have to tell you, so often my eyes welled up during those meetings. I treated those like a gift almost. It was very special, and it allowed people to mingle and be together, and at the same time for me to have the pulse. Because we do have a new systems now. We used to take the pulse, you know, once every maybe 2 months, but now we have this new applause systems by which we take it on a weekly basis, just 1 or 2 questions. But this is different, because it is interactive, if you want. And sometimes, you know, someone says something and another person piggyback, and it makes them reflect. And for me, it allows me also to give some message that sometimes you think people have heard them, but, you know, in the big group, people hear what they can, and you know, sometimes they're not ready, but in a smaller group, it's way easier. But I would recommend this to anybody, whether there's a pandemic or not. And I used to do those things in person, But, you know, for me, I decided right at the beginning of the pandemic that we would not be a victim of the pandemic, but we would seize all the opportunities that it offered. And maybe that explains the growth of the organization. And we were digitally very ready for a pandemic, if you want. We were on a SharePoint environment and all that, but we were not ready for that growth necessarily. And I'll share an anecdote for me. I'm very good at iPhone, or what used to be a BlackBerry. Okay, very, very good. There's nothing I cannot do on this. I used to write text speeches with this, but I was not using a computer at all. And so now it means that during the pandemic, I had to learn how to use a computer. So my team is really teasing me because they're saying, you know, it just took a pandemic for you to be at the computer.
I love it. I love it. Well, this was fantastic sharing. And you know, one of the things that we hear with our clients across Canada is, how do we get our team to stay connected? And we're onboarding folks they've never met, like you just explained, Denise. And what a beautiful way, by mixing the teams up like that, mixing the leadership team up with the employees, and not segregating it or creating silos within your organization to get them. That's part of a great way to onboard and to transfer knowledge. And so I see that we're out of time. I want to thank you both so much for having this discussion with me today and for sharing your experience. It's an opportunity for everybody in the audience to connect with you as mentors, and for you to continue to grow your networks and share these wonderful insights, because there is no roadmap for this, folks, and we see it here today. So thank you so much, Bob and Denise. I'm going to ask you to turn off your cameras and